Have you ever wondered why poverty, a seemingly age-old problem, persists even in the 21st century? It's a question that has puzzled many, from scholars to policymakers. Perhaps you've considered this too. The answer lies not in individual shortcomings, but rather in a complex web of systemic factors. From the cycle of poverty to systemic barriers, the reasons are intricate and interconnected. But don't just take my word for it. Let's dive into the systemic reasons that perpetuate poverty. Poverty is a cycle, a trap that is nearly impossible to escape. Imagine a wheel, constantly turning, each revolution mirroring the last. This is the cycle of poverty, a relentless pattern that ensnares individuals and families, often spanning multiple generations. At the heart of this cycle is a lack of access to quality education. Many impoverished communities lack well-funded schools, and children growing up in these environments often struggle to obtain the knowledge and skills necessary for well-paying jobs. In turn, without a solid educational foundation, these children grow up to enter the workforce relegated to low-paying jobs. They find themselves in the same financial straits as their parents, trapped in low-income employment, barely able to make ends meet. The struggle to survive on meager wages leaves little room for savings, with every penny accounted for in the daily battle for survival. Setting aside money for future investments becomes a distant dream. This lack of savings further deepens the poverty trap. Without savings, there's no safety net for unforeseen circumstances such as medical emergencies or sudden loss of employment. Moreover, the inability to invest in better opportunities, be it further education, a small business venture, or simply a better living environment, ensures that the cycle continues unabated, and so the wheel keeps turning. The children of these low-income families are inevitably born into the same cycle. They face the same lack of access to quality education, the same relegation to low-income jobs, the same struggle to save and invest. The cycle of poverty repeats itself, generation after generation, a relentless wheel that keeps turning. But it's not just about the financial aspect. This cycle has far-reaching implications, affecting mental and physical health, widening social inequalities, and perpetuating a sense of hopelessness and despair. It's a systemic issue that requires systemic solutions. So, as we can see, the cycle of poverty is self-perpetuating and hard to break. It's a relentless wheel that keeps turning, trapping individuals and families in a cycle of hardship that spans generations. But the cycle of poverty is not the only thing that keeps the poor in their place. It's a much more complex web, with systemic barriers that often go unrecognized. These barriers are like invisible walls. They may not be seen, but they are very much real and tangible for those who face them daily. Let's take a moment to explore these systemic barriers. They come in many forms, and one of the most prevalent is discrimination. It's a sad reality that in many societies, opportunities are not equally distributed. This discrimination can be based on race, religion, gender, or social status. These prejudices create a major roadblock for the poor, preventing them from accessing opportunities that could potentially lift them out of poverty. Next, we have economic policies that favor the rich. We live in a world where the wealthier you are, the more doors open for you. This is especially true when it comes to economic policies. Tax structures often benefit those with more capital, and the allocation of public resources tends to favor areas with higher income populations. These policies can widen the gap between the rich and the poor, making it even harder for those in poverty to climb the socio-economic ladder. And then, there's the lack of social safety nets. In many countries, the systems that should be in place to protect the most vulnerable are either non-existent or woefully inadequate. Without a strong social safety net, the poor are left to navigate life's challenges without a safety harness. A single unexpected expense like a medical emergency can plunge them deeper into poverty. These systemic barriers, often invisible to those not affected, are like an intricate maze that the poor must navigate without a map. Each one further entrenches poverty, making it difficult for those trapped in its grip to break free. The cycle of poverty is not just about a lack of resources, but also about these systemic barriers that keep the poor in their place. These systemic barriers, often invisible to those not affected, play a significant role in keeping the poor poor. The consequences of poverty reach far beyond the individual. A ripple effect ensues, touching every corner of society and the economy. Let's consider crime rates. They often surge in impoverished areas, where desperation and lack of opportunities can push individuals towards unlawful activities. The cost of these crimes, both in terms of law enforcement and the impact on victims, is a burden on society. But the consequences don't stop there. The economy as a whole is also affected. When a large segment of the population lacks purchasing power, overall economic growth slows down. Businesses have fewer customers, and less money circulates through the economy, stifling innovation and job creation. Moreover, poverty can lead to societal instability. When basic needs remain unmet, dissatisfaction grows, leading to social unrest. This instability can deter investment and further hinder economic development. So what happens when we address poverty? Well, it's like turning the tide. As poverty reduces, crime rates can decrease, economic growth can accelerate, and society can become more stable. In essence, tackling poverty can create a virtuous cycle of prosperity. Remember, every person lifted out of poverty is a potential customer, a potential innovator, a potential peacemaker. Their success is our success. Their prosperity, our prosperity. Addressing poverty, then, is not just a moral imperative but a societal necessity. And the benefits? They reach far beyond the individual, touching every corner of society and the economy. So, why does poverty persist? It's not as simple as one might think. We've journeyed through the complex terrain of poverty, exploring the intricacies of its unyielding cycle. We've seen how it replicates itself, generation after generation, trapping individuals in a relentless loop of scarcity. Then we delved into the systemic barriers that stand like insurmountable walls, blocking the path to prosperity for many. These barriers, deeply entrenched in our societal framework, exacerbate the struggle of those living in poverty. We also shed light on the grave consequences of poverty. The ripples of its impact stretch far and wide, affecting not only the impoverished but society as a whole. The issue, as we've seen, is multifaceted, intricate, and deeply rooted. There is no magic wand to wave away poverty. It requires concerted systemic efforts to dismantle the barriers and break the cycle. It's a complex issue with no easy solutions, but understanding the problem is the first step to finding ways to alleviate poverty.